Hello and welcome. You are watching Head to Head on UATV. I'm Tom Bell. Now, just recently, the head of the EU delegation to Ukraine, Hugh Mingarelli, stated that the Kremlin is purposefully leading a campaign against Ukraine to discredit its image in Western Europe and, as a result of this, weaken it democratically, certainly abroad. Now, we have a more detailed talk on this programme about this and the scale of the damage and the disinformation campaign and also ways to fight it. We're pleased to be joined by Dmitro Zolotukhin. He's Ukraine's Deputy Minister for Information Policy. Thank you very much for coming into our studio again.
Hello, thank you for inviting.
So already, we're only a couple of weeks into 2018 and the European Commission is discussing this disinformation. Also recently, the French President, Emmanuel Macron, came out and said he's going to introduce laws to regulate this sort of fake news, not just in traditional media, sort of television, online as well. So what do you think, ahead looking at 2018, how do you think this fake news or this Russian strategy of fake news is going to change? How they spread it to Europe and what do you think? How's this going to happen?
We try to follow very closely to all the changes we see in European countries towards the changes into legislative level or concepts how to treat fake news and false information in media and social media and so on. And I think that, as I said before, last 3 years of the Russian aggression to my European colleagues and colleagues from the West, Ukraine has a lot of what to share of our approaches and of our findings that we've seen on the path that we went when trying to tackle the fake news and information threats. And I see now that some of the European governments and representatives in European Union and in European countries, they face the same problem we faced in 2014, 2015, when we tried to develop some kind of new documents and new regulations, how to put the government or governmental agencies in line with the new threats and how to make the government able to face these threats and to respond them somehow into the public and into our partners in the media sphere. I think that the whole concept of the fake news, as we know, even the fake news was like put as the word of the year by the Oxford Dictionary, and the concept is rather threatful itself to the free democracies. And we have to agree that this threat is not put by the people who want to treat this problem, but by the Russian government, who was the initiator of this problem at the moment and in 2013 and even earlier. And again, when I talking about this problem at the conferences or the roundtables, I'm saying that we're trying to invent new words to the old problem. And the old problem is that people lie. People lie in media, people lie in social media, and now, as the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Pavlo Klimkin, in Ukraine says, Russia is lying in industrial scale. And this industrial scale affects not only Ukraine and post-Soviet, I would say, the territories or the post-Soviet space, but also all the world. We can pick up the problems of the elections in US, in France, in Germany, the referendum in Netherlands and Spain, and the separatistic movement in Spain, and so on and so forth.
So it's not an isolated problem as such?
Absolutely. It's like worldwide, and I think that really we try to talk that when we talk about fake news, as the new word for the old problem, which is lie, we're saying that the approaches of the legislative decision of this problem is very threatful because someone will have to decide what is fake news, what is truth.
Well, exactly. And this is the debate that has been going on for several years now. Where do you draw the line? Between fake news and news that you don't like.
As you understand, there are very many possibilities to, to shape this situation and to give advantage to the political actors in this sphere.
Who would want to take advantage of this as well.
Yes, and that would lead us to another political problems and quarrels.
So do you think then that the definition of fake news and the strategies to counter it as such are actually very clear.
My point is that we cannot talk about some fake news like in vacuum, like they appear out of nowhere and we have to tackle them as this weather or rain or snow or whatever. I talk and I speak always about that fake news have its source and have its reasons. And for me, the reason is Russian Federation and Russian government who is doing this.
What can outside actors, such as Ukraine and the European, do to counteract this if it's coming from the Russian Federation? Like Ukraine doesn't have any influence on the Russian laws, for example.
We see that sanctions that were put by European Union and US to the Russian Federation are working. And the new talks about the possibilities of revealing of these sanctions are very dangerous, in my opinion, because this is how we send a signal, send a message to the Kremlin that whatever you do, you can do whatever you want, but in some day we will get back to some business as usual.
But the fake news is not linked to the sanctions as such, but linked to other factors, sort of political, economic.
But this is the sign that European society and society of democratic countries will not accept and tolerate this threat of the information space as well as the diplomatic and international affairs space also from the side of the Kremlin. And sanctions, of course, they link more to some practical steps that Russia has done towards the annexation of Crimea and the war in Donbass. But also this is a sign that European and free democratic society is not tolerating what the Kremlin is doing. And by revealing this message, by canceling this, we like harming our strategy towards this. So we cannot say that we are against fake news, but still we can talk and we can work with the Kremlin, with Russia, as we did before.
Yeah, no, of course. And actually, I read a great quote yesterday, and I forget where it was from, but it said that a lie is already halfway around the world, while the truth is getting its shoes on. This is quite a famous quote, right?
Absolutely. This words by Churchill.
And I thought, yeah, exactly. So I thought this was a great quote, and it's so true as well, because people, when they read the newspapers, they watch television, they believe that what they're being told is the truth. So how do you educate people
to illustrate this thing? I followed previously the course that took place in Great Britain against the RT television, the Russia Today, by the British authorities, Ofcom and so on.
This is Ofcom, yeah.
Yes, and it seems to me that there were about 6 courts in all. And in the end, I think that mostly they ended by the victory of Ofcom. So they got the court decision about that RT was wrong. But what effect this decision had? Because it took half a year or even a year to get those court decisions. But the lies that were spread among the public and led to making decision among the public about various questions of society. For example, the relations to Ukraine, relations of the Great Britain with the other world, and so on and so forth. So people already got this information, they make their decision, they implemented this. And in a year after this, the Ofcom and the Great Britain got these court decisions that says that RT is wrong. So my point is that what is the real power of those court decisions when the lies was spread already and it get that effect?
So you don't believe that legislation is perhaps the most effective way to counter this?
Exactly. My point is that this is important because this is how the decisions in democratic society is being taken into place. But in the same time, we have to admit and we have to accept that the administrative and legislative approach to the question of countering fake news, countering lies that's spreading all over the world is not exactly the path that we can get some decent results
I mean, there is really no real way you can get effective results quickly to counter this. But there must be some start. There must be some sort of strategy, don't you think? Maybe, for example, before the interview today, I saw on the internet, I think it was from last year, there was a social advert about fake, people going around the supermarket, taking products off a shelf and looking at the ingredients and what was fake, what was not fake, and that sort of thing. Do you think perhaps more social initiatives are needed to make people aware of what is could be fake, what is not, and what to trust, and that sort of thing?
Again, social initiatives like the volunteer societies and NGOs is very important, and this is what prevents us to drowning in this ocean of the lies and fake news. So we can take the Stop Fake, Inform Napalm, and various volunteer societies. But the experience says that, for example, last days I've seen on a Twitter on one of the European conferences that Sweden presented their idea to establish a governmental institution, an agency, that will have the duty to somehow deal with the questions of disinformation, of the information hazards and threats towards the Swedish society information space. And for me, this is the one of those examples that says that decision to establish the Ministry of Information Policy in 2014 and 15 was correct. And it doesn't say that these kind of agencies can solve all the questions, but in my opinion, the governmental point on the various problems of the society in the independent country, not only in Ukraine, all over Europe, all over the world, has to be implemented by the means of strategic communication, by the means of filling of the information space, by the governmental position, and giving people more information, giving them opportunity to communicate back what they think about it.
Especially Ukraine's stakeholders in Europe as well.
Absolutely,
often they get information from various sources which are perhaps not the most accurate, or are misleading or slanted in one way or another. So actually, you think perhaps public diplomacy is really the way forward? And
public diplomacy also. The point is that the task of these, all of these activities on the governmental and non-governmental level is subject to fill the space, the information space, with objective information that is being supported by the biggest part of the society. Because what is harming us a lot and in the biggest way is really fake news and lies that's spreading much more faster than we can deal with this by the legislative or administrative steps. So empowering good side instead of tackling with the bad side, in my opinion, would be the good issue, like a positive step, which doesn't say that we have to not to punish the reason of initiating of this bad activity, which I think is, and I'm absolutely sure that the Kremlin was the first initiator of this, because, well, you can see in previously chronological way. This problem appears in 2013-14 for Ukraine, and then you see that the first big steps in the European Union started in 2016, and now they get to the point that we had, for example, with negotiation of the draft of the Doctrine of Information Security of Ukraine previously. So now I see that those critics that German and French legislators and governmental persons they get now. Those critics, we just passed it in 2015, 2016. So, well, we can share, we can work on this together, and in the end, we will get some good answers on this.
Okay, well, let's end it there. Thank you very much for coming to our studio, Mr. Zolotukhin, and hopefully we'll see you again soon. Thank you. That was Dmitro Zolotukhin. He's the Ukraine's Deputy Minister of Information Policy. You're watching UATV.